I always thought I had a happy marriage. 11 years together, 9 years married, and 2 beautiful daughters. Jonas and I built a life that felt solid. He worked away for months at a time, but he was always honest, always reassuring. Or so I believed. That illusion shattered the moment a stranger knocked on my door. A woman named Cherry, tears streaming down her face. What she told me changed everything. Jonas had another life, another family. A secret carefully hidden for 6 years. As I led her inside, one question consumed me. How much of my marriage was a lie? I always believed I had a happy marriage. Jonas and I had been together for over 11 years, married for 9, and we shared 2 wonderful daughters, our 8-year-old twins. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was good. Solid, or so I thought. Jonas worked in an industry that required him to be away for long periods. 3 months working abroad, then 3 months at home. It wasn't ideal, but it provided us with a comfortable life. He earned enough that I didn't need to work if I didn't want to. And in all those years, I had never doubted him. Not once. He was always open with me, sometimes even too open, casually mentioning when he found someone attractive but swearing it meant nothing. His honesty made me trust him more. Then came that knock on my door. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Jonas was away for a weekend business trip, and the twins were staying at my sister's for a play date. I had the house to myself, enjoying the rare silence when I heard it, a soft but urgent knock. At first I hesitated. We weren't expecting anyone. Maybe a delivery? A neighbor? When I opened the door, I saw a woman standing there, young, maybe late 20s, with tired eyes and an expression I couldn't quite read. Then, before she even spoke, her face crumpled and she started to cry. Confused, I stepped back. "Can I help you?" She wiped at her tears, taking a shaky breath before looking me dead in the eyes. "You don't know me," she said, her voice breaking, "but I know your husband." Something cold slithered down my spine. "Who are you?" My voice was sharper than I intended, but I suddenly felt a weight pressing down on my chest. "My name is Cherry." Another deep breath. "And I think we need to talk about Jonas." I should have slammed the door. I should have told her to leave. But something in her eyes, something raw and desperate, kept me frozen. My hands trembled as I gripped the doorknob, my mind racing through 1,000 scenarios, none of which prepared me for what was coming. "Please," she whispered. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." And against every instinct screaming at me to shut her out, I stepped aside and let her in. I led Cherry inside, my mind already spiraling into chaos. I didn't know what I was expecting her to say, but deep down, dread was settling in. She sat on the couch, her hands shaking as she wiped at the lingering tears on her face. I watched her closely, my heart pounding. "How do you know Jonas?" My voice was steady, but my hands were clenched into fists on my lap. Cherry took a deep breath, her fingers gripping the fabric of her jeans. "Because," she whispered, "I've been with him for 6 years." The words hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth, then closed it. No, this had to be a mistake. Jonas wouldn't, he couldn't. "You're lying," I blurted out, shaking my head. "There's no way." Cherry pulled out her phone and with trembling fingers scrolled through her gallery. Then she turned the screen toward me. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. There he was, Jonas, my husband, holding a small boy, maybe 3 years old, smiling at the camera like he had no worries in the world. There were more pictures. Jonas and Cherry together, Jonas in a different apartment, Jonas at a playground with the boy. My stomach twisted violently. "I didn't know about you," Cherry said, her voice hoarse. "I swear, I had no idea. He told me he didn't believe in marriage, that he wasn't ready for that kind of commitment." She let out a bitter laugh. "And all this time he was married to you." I couldn't speak. My throat burned, my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to throw her phone across the room, to rewind time and unhear everything. "He has 2 separate lives," Cherry continued. 2 different social media accounts, 2 completely different worlds. "And he's careful. So careful. He never let me meet his friends, never talked much about his past. He said his parents died in a car accident years ago, so there was no family for me to meet." It all made sense, until I found the bank statements. I forced myself to look at her. "What bank statements?" Cherry swallowed hard. "He has an apartment, one paid for by his company." She looked away for a second before meeting my eyes again. "The one he brings you to when you visit him." I felt my stomach drop. That apartment. The one where we spent weekends together when the twins stayed with my sister. The one Jonas said was his temporary home during his business trips. Cherry let out a slow breath. When I saw the transactions, I knew something was off. I found his spare keys and... She hesitated, guilt flashing in her eyes. I snooped. That's when I found pictures of you, of your daughters. That's when I realized everything was a lie. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I clenched my fists tighter, my nails digging into my palms. My world, the one I thought was so stable, was crumbling around me. Jonas had lived a double life, and I had never seen it coming. Cherry's words hung in the air, suffocating and inescapable. I sat frozen, my mind scrambling for something, anything that would make this all make sense. But no matter how I twisted it, there was no explanation that could undo what I had just heard. Jonas had another life, another home, another family, and I had been blind to it. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the nausea rising in my throat. How long have you known? My voice was barely more than a whisper. Cherry exhaled shakily, gripping the fabric of her jeans so tightly her knuckles turned white. 3 months. She looked down, avoiding my gaze. 3 months of second-guessing myself. 3 months of staring at those photos, checking and rechecking every detail, hoping I was wrong. Her voice broke, and she laughed bitterly. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. That maybe I was misunderstanding something. That Jonas couldn't, be that much of a liar. I let out a hollow laugh of my own. Yeah, join the club. She looked at me then, her expression unreadable. I wanted to tell you right away, she admitted. I almost did, but I was scared. What if you didn't believe me? What if you thought I was some crazy woman trying to ruin your marriage? She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I even thought about confronting Jonas first, but then I realized he'd just lie, again. He's too good at it. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. She was right. Jonas was too good at lying. He had fooled us both, and not just for a few weeks or months, but for years. I swallowed the lump in my throat. So what changed? Why now? Cherry hesitated, then reached into her bag. She pulled out a small envelope, placing it on the coffee table between us. Because I found this. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Inside were printouts, bank statements, receipts, even screenshots of messages. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof of Jonas's double life. Transactions from our shared account, seamlessly woven with expenses from his life with Cherry. Dinners, gifts, rent payments. 2 separate existences, neatly balanced like a twisted masterpiece. I felt my heart pound against my ribs as I flipped through them, each one a nail in the coffin of my marriage. I needed you to know, Cherry whispered, because we deserve better than this. I looked up at her, seeing my own devastation reflected in her eyes. For the first time, it truly sank in. She wasn't my enemy. She was just another victim of the same man. I sucked in a breath, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Rage, betrayal, grief. But beneath it all, one thought kept echoing in my head. If Jonas could lie about this, what else had he been hiding? Silence stretched between us, thick and unbearable. The proof lay before me, undeniable. The reality of it should have sunk in by now, but my mind refused to accept it. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the wreckage of my life, unable to process how I got here. Then, without warning, something inside me snapped. I shot up from the couch, the sudden movement making Cherry flinch. My chest tightened, my breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. 6 years, I whispered, but the anger rising in my throat turned my voice into something sharp and venomous. 6 years, and I never suspected a thing. I let out a bitter laugh, running my hands through my hair. I was so stupid. Cherry's voice was soft but firm. You weren't stupid. He was just that good at lying. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like I had spent the last decade living in some beautifully crafted illusion, built brick by brick with Jonas's deceit. And now it was crumbling, leaving me drowning in the dust of what I thought was real. I turned to Cherry, my vision blurred with unshed tears. Did you love him? The question came out before I could stop it. Her face twisted with something between pain and regret. I thought I did, she admitted. But now, I don't even know who I was in love with. The man I knew? He wasn't real, was he? I shook my head. No, he wasn't. Cherry let out a shaky breath, her hands clenched together. I hated you at first, she confessed. When I first saw your pictures in that apartment, I wanted to believe you were the other woman, that you were the one ruining my life." She looked at me with tired, red-rimmed eyes. "But you weren't. We were both fooled." The weight of her words settled heavily in my chest. I had wanted to hate her too. When she first knocked on my door, when she spoke Jonas's name, when she showed me those photos, my first instinct had been rage, betrayal, the desperate need to lash out. But the truth was, she wasn't the villain here. Jonas was. And now, sitting across from her, I realized something else. I wasn't alone. Cherry wiped at her face, attempting to pull herself together. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I exhaled shakily, my mind still spinning. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm not letting him get away with this." Cherry nodded slowly, her expression shifting into something resolute. "Neither am I." We weren't just two women betrayed by the same man. We were survivors. And for the first time since my world came crashing down, I wasn't drowning alone. The weight of it all settled in, heavy and suffocating. I stared at the pile of evidence Cherry had laid out before me, the reality of Jonas's deception pressing down on my chest like an immovable force. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about what came next. "I need to think," I muttered, standing abruptly. My body felt restless, like I needed to move or scream or do something to stop my thoughts from eating me alive. Cherry watched me cautiously. "Are you okay?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Not even close." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Yeah, me neither." I paced the living room, my mind racing. My daughters, my home, my entire life, woven into something that had never been real. The Jonas I thought I knew didn't exist, and the one who did, I didn't even recognize him anymore. A thought struck me and I turned to Cherry. "Does he know that you know?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, not yet. I needed to be sure before I confronted him." I exhaled sharply, my fingers curling into fists. Good. That meant we had time. Time to figure out our next move. Time to make sure he didn't try to manipulate his way out of this. Cherry bit her lip. "Are you going to tell him?" I didn't answer right away. My thoughts swirled, emotions clashing inside me. Part of me wanted to call him right now, to scream at him through the phone, to demand answers for every lie he had ever told me. But another part, the smarter part, knew that wouldn't do anything. Jonas was a liar, a skilled one. And if I confronted him without a plan, he would just twist everything to his advantage. "No," I finally said, "not yet." Cherry nodded, her expression mirroring my own resolve. The silence stretched between us again, heavier this time. The reality of our situation was settling in. This wasn't just a painful discovery, it was a war we had to prepare for. Finally, Cherry sighed and glanced toward the door. "I should go," she said quietly. I hesitated. A few hours ago, she had been a stranger, the last person I would have ever expected to walk into my life, and yet she was the only one who truly understood what I was going through. "Do you have a place to stay?" I asked. She gave me a small, tired smile. "Yeah, I'll be fine." I wanted to say more, but the words wouldn't come, so I just nodded. Cherry hesitated at the door, glancing back at me. "Whatever happens next, you don't have to go through this alone." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "Neither do you." She gave me one last nod before stepping out into the night. And as I closed the door behind her, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over, not even close.